with a 64 present. A Playguide and video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi there once again, welcome to another Lemon 64 play guide and review. In this week's episode we'll be checking out Panther, developed and published by Mastertronic in 1986. In this game we are the pilots of a Panther aircraft and it's our job to evacuate the last remaining human survivors on the planet Xenon. No, you couldn't make that up, who've been attacked by aliens. It's our job to get rid of those aliens, and in between waves of those we can pick up those survivors. By pushing forward on the controller we can now land and collect any survivors in those bunkers, and sometimes the next wave will appear, unfortunately, before we've collected all those, so we have a choice between trying to defend ourselves and trying to collect those guys. We can make them walk for a distance, but it looks like the bunker is empty, and when we are too far from that, sometimes we can't collect all the survivors. In this game, it's a matter of shooting down these aliens, and if you watch the shadows on the screen there, the shadows give away their height and also their speed. At low altitude, we fly very, very slowly, and high altitude like this is the full speed of the game. So let's continue past the rail line there. We find a piece of open desert before we get on to the abandoned city, and taking on these guys once we've destroyed a wave. Don't forget we can collect those survivors, and we won't be able to do that in the middle of an attack. So let's try to line up those guys and blow those away. Unfortunately, having triggered that, it doesn't appear to have spawned in time, and by the time we find that civilian hideout, well, the attack wave is in full swing. All we can do is hide out, hopefully at a safe distance, and avoid those projectiles the aliens will fire in our direction. Once again, if they are very low on the screen, they will fly very slowly, and sometimes the aliens simply line up to be destroyed. But those bunkers will only have a finite number of guys in there, sometimes one guy, sometimes 10, so you never quite know. And look at that, one wave clears off to make room for another. On the instrument panel on the bottom of the screen you can see we have 3 ships left, and we also have 6 enemies in this current wave. We have also collected 15 civilians, and of course you can see the score and the radar, which is practically useless because our eyes will be always looking towards those aliens and not particularly looking at the radar. You may also notice theta wave launch there, and that's actually the number of the wave, and if you actually know Latin numbers you might be able to understand, and well, crashing into those or crashing into their firepower or one of those buildings you can see burnt out there, that's an early death, and you don't really want to accomplish that. According to the manual this ship can take 5 hits, but I've only ever found 1 hit to be, well, like that, to be the death of us. So now we are down to our last life. The great thing about this game is periodically the landscape will change, and now we seem to be flying over a lake or an inland sea, and now we find even more waves of the aliens. It's important to fly low, and then we fly very slowly, and yes, we can almost land on that water. Not actually land, I don't think, but if we almost land, that will almost pause the screen, or literally pause that screen, and then we'll have to pull that joystick back again to gain some more speed. This tactic works very well on this section to line those enemies up and to blow those away. Now, instead of a bunker, we actually find something that looks like an oil rig, and if we land on that platform, we can collect those survivors, but if we collide with that oil rig, we'll obviously die, and the main structure of that is pretty large. And those enemies, of course, are relentless, so you can't afford to hang around. Those shots are more or less on target, but of course we have got time to weave around those. And I think it's great that we can simply lower ourselves on the landscape, and that will slow down the action, slow enough for us to play it. You can't zoom along these levels at full speed, or we'll simply crash out into these aliens or their firepower, so sometimes you have to take it easy. That's another one destroyed. Do we actually collect those guys, or do we try to make it to the other side of this lake? Well, let's try to continue, and it's not very easy to do that. Let's try to speed our way through, but, well, that's the attack wave over. Fly under the radar, but I unfortunately collide with one of those aliens just at the wrong moment. Let's try it for the second and the last time to get through this game. Just some information, some background about Panther. It was developed and published, of course, by Mastertronic and released in 1986. It was coded by Peter Adams, who famously coded Blue Max in 1983, and you might remember Blue Max as being a very similar isometric game, and he also created Survivor in 1983, which is a similarly top-rated 8 out of 10 mega game. Survivor and Blue Max were in high praise at the time, and that led on to some reviewers saying that Blue Max was a souped up version of Zaxxon, which was a 1982 Sega original arcade machine. So lo and behold, in 1984 Peter Adams got the job of converting Zaxxon to the Commodore 64. In 1985 and 1986 he created Panther, and then that was his last game on the Commodore 64. But you can certainly see the Zaxxon and Blue Max heritage in this game. It's still very smooth and it's still very playable, and it doesn't have barriers in the way like Zaxxon. It doesn't have that arcade feel, but at the same time it certainly had appeal for me, and I remember playing this very much over and over, trying to get further, because it's very much an aerial adventure. So let's continue once again for the second and the last time across this desert. And wow, look at that. Sometimes those guys can veer straight into our path and we can lose lives needlessly, but for the most part, let's try to collect more of those survivors. And 19 survivors is what we are on at the moment, and that was the maximum total amount that we collected last time. So let's see if we can beat that. And these pesky critters there, they are incessant buzzing around, but it's a great feeling taking on those guys and rewarding ourselves with some more evacuees. So whilst you see me doing that, I'll just mention the graphics are better in most ways than Blue Max. Yes, we get some more detail, we get similar trees, and unfortunately we don't get any bombs, so we can't carpet bomb any cars flowing along this landscape. And yes, we did get cars and bridges in Blue Max, which is sorely missed. This being an aerial racer, perhaps they could have squeezed a bridge in there, maybe allowing us to fly under it. But apart from that, the graphics are functional, and as you can see, well, they are colourful, and all the ships have different colours. And I really do appreciate the spinning engine of our craft spinning away in the centre of that thing. Although if that is the engine, where does it leave room for the passengers? The sound effects are functional, and we get to hear whenever something explodes, of course, and a simple beep whenever we collect any survivors. But for the main part, the sound effects take a backseat to this great music, and the music is memorable in this game. It certainly goes on for some time. The music was created by David Whittaker, and David has 91 titles listed on the Lemon 64 database as a musician, and I always appreciate David Whittaker music in any Commodore 64 game. Like every other shoot 'em up in the book, the player can be incredibly lucky playing this game and avoid things by mere pixels, and their sheer skills and high coordination have never been tested more with this isometric 3D landscape. And it was a challenge in Blue Max, and even more so with Zaxxon, with those sometimes narrow alleyways that the player must fly through. In this game it's very much an open world map, as long as you discount the times that we have to fly down and collect these guys. But it does carry on for some time, and after this lake you'll be surprised to know that it does continue for quite some time. I'm not sure whether I've managed to complete the game legitimately, but I do remember I did complete it once, losing infinite lives. The aim of the game is to reach the mothership, the main evacuation vessel, which is somewhere at the end of all this, and if you make it all the way there, then the game loops back to the start with the same score, obviously continuing, and you get to continue and play the game to pick up more survivors and play the whole thing all over again. But we won't be getting anywhere near that far on this playthrough, basically because we will be showing you the deserted city part 2 and the abandoned city, and you'll probably not find anything in there apart from instant death. So let's try to avoid once again, and look at that again, the enemies fly backwards into our vehicle, write us off before we get anywhere near the abandoned city. But you can see fly under the radar. That's very much important, because if you don't, you'll be attacked instantly by a hail of rockets, and that will kill us instantly. So what we have to do is to fly very much on the ground as slowly as possible, and this is as slow as it will go, and hopefully avoid all this wreckage. That is very much easier said than done, and if you only have a few lives at this point, it's very difficult unless you know the perfect route and you have the perfect skills to get through all these narrow junctions. Sometimes just veering off means game over. This radar section adds much needed variety to this game, breaks up the gameplay. As long as the player can get through this. Unfortunately, after this, then the gameplay is very hard, and even if we do manage to get through that bit, well, it's very difficult from here on in. So maybe it's not too great for the absolute novice. But taking a look at the scores, whilst you see me trying to get there, I'll just say that Commodore user gave this game 70%, Zap gave Panther 73% in 1987, and Your Computer gave it 5 out of 5, which is of course 100%. And I don't think it's worth 100%, but certainly 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 virtually is what the Lemon 64 rating is currently on the Lemon 64 database, so I think this game certainly deserves it and commands respect. Unfortunately, it does get hard pretty quickly, and all the fun disappears when we find the level is very difficult, with homing missiles and things that we cannot really avoid unless we know the level absolutely perfectly and inside out. And I'm struggling to get anywhere doing that. All this random firepower, but braving it with the skills of Yoda there, we are getting further. It won't be very long now because we are on our last life. And that's game over, so thank you once again for viewing another Lemon 64 play guide and review. Thank you.